Can you imagine a place where every breath you take could be your last challenge? Where water doesn't flow, it freezes solid in the pipes. Where food turns to ice before it reaches your mouth. What kind of people choose to call such a place home? And more importantly, why? Welcome to Komic Valley, Ladakh. One of the highest inhabited villages on planet Earth. A place so extreme, so unforgiving, so brutally beautiful that it defies everything we know about human survival. This isn't just a village. This is a testament to the indomitable human spirit. This is where life clings to existence at an altitude where most would struggle just to breathe. Picture this: temperatures plummeting to -40 degrees Celsius. Not for a day, not for a week, but for months on end. Winter here isn't just a season, it's a siege. A frozen prison that locks this village away from the rest of civilization for 6 to 7 months every single year. How do people survive when the world forgets they exist? How do children grow up knowing that half their life will be spent in complete isolation? What keeps a community alive when nature itself seems determined to erase them from the map? In Komic, farming isn't a way of life. It's a desperate race against time. The earth thaws for just 2 to 3 months a year. Imagine that. An entire year's food supply must be grown, harvested, and stored in less than 90 days.
सारा सामान स्टॉक करके यहाँ रखते हैं।
अच्छा, यहाँ करते हो आप? ये आपका एक तरह से स्टोर रूम हो गया।
स्टोर रूम।
One mistake, one bad season, one unexpected frost, and families could face starvation. Yet these people have mastered this deadly game for centuries. They've learned to read the land, to work with nature's narrow window of mercy, to make the impossible possible. But here's what makes Komic truly extraordinary. There are no forests here, no wood to burn, no trees to provide warmth when the killing cold descends. So what do they burn? Animal dung, dried, collected, stored like precious treasure. This is their fuel, their lifeline, their only defense against temperatures that can kill within hours. Every piece of dung becomes more valuable than gold when winter's darkness falls. Rising above this harsh landscape stands one of the world's highest monasteries, a spiritual fortress that has watched over Komic for hundreds of years. Here, ancient Tibetan Buddhist traditions aren't just practiced. They're the very foundation of survival. While the modern world rushes forward with technology and convenience, Komic remains anchored in traditions that have sustained life in this impossible place for generations. So why do they stay? What invisible force binds these people to a land that offers them nothing but hardship? Today we journey to the edge of human endurance. We step into a world where survival isn't guaranteed, where every day is a victory against nature's fury, and where the human spirit burns brightest in the coldest, most desolate corner of our planet. This is Komic Valley, where life shouldn't exist, but somehow, miraculously, it does. Perched at a staggering altitude of over 15,000 feet above sea level, Komic Village exists in a realm where the earth meets the sky. This is not just high, this is where the air thins to the point that every breath becomes a conscious effort. Where oxygen levels drop so low that visitors gasp and struggle. Yet the people of Komic move with ease. Their bodies adapted over generations to survive in conditions that would defeat most of humanity. This is one of the highest permanently inhabited villages on our planet, a place that challenges the very definition of what it means to be habitable. The geography here is otherworldly. Nestled in the Spiti Valley of Himachal Pradesh, Komic sits in a landscape that seems more Martian than terrestrial. Barren mountains stretch endlessly in every direction, their peaks clawing at the heavens. There are no gentle slopes here, no rolling hills, only stark, dramatic ridges carved by millions of years of geological violence. The terrain is unforgiving, rocky, arid, and stripped of almost all vegetation. In summer, the land reveals itself in shades of brown and gray, a palette of survival. In winter, it disappears entirely beneath blankets of snow and ice, becoming a frozen wasteland where only the strongest can endure. But why would anyone choose to build a village here? To answer that, we must journey back 7 centuries, to a time when faith moved mountains and shaped civilizations. Between the 13th and 15th centuries, during the late medieval period, a spiritual revolution was sweeping across the Tibetan plateau. Tibetan Buddhism was spreading like wildfire, and with it came a radical idea that proximity to the heavens meant proximity to the divine. The higher you climbed, the closer you came to enlightenment. It was this belief that brought the first settlers to Komic. Tibetan Buddhist monks, driven by devotion and the desire to commune with the sacred, established the Tongyud Gompa, one of the world's highest monasteries. This wasn't just a religious structure. It was a beacon that drew people upward, defying logic and survival instincts. Alongside these monks came the local Spishin people, of Tibetan ethnic origin, who saw in this harsh landscape not a challenge to be avoided, but a spiritual opportunity to be embraced. The establishment of monasteries during this period didn't just define spiritual life, it defined settlement patterns across the entire region. Where monasteries rose, villages followed. The monks needed support, and communities formed around these spiritual centers, creating a symbiotic relationship between faith and survival. Komic Village grew from this sacred foundation, built not despite the extreme conditions, but because of them. For these early settlers, suffering in the service of spirituality was not a sacrifice. It was a privilege. Living at such altitudes, where the body struggled and the elements raged, was seen as a form of devotion, a daily test of faith and endurance. The very harshness that would drive most people away became the reason they stayed. When the first snows begin to fall in late November, the people of Komic know what's coming. The countdown begins. Roads will soon vanish beneath meters of snow. Mountain passes will become death traps. Communication with the outside world will cease. For the next 6 to 7 months, sometimes stretching into June in particularly brutal years, Komic will be completely cut off from civilization. No supplies coming in. No one is coming out. What happens if someone runs out of food? What if a child falls seriously ill? What if an accident occurs? This is why winter preparation in Komic isn't just important. It's literally a matter of life and death. Months before the first snowflake falls, families begin their desperate race against time. Every household transforms into a strategic operations center, calculating, measuring, planning for survival. How much barley will 5 people need for 6 months? How many kilograms of wheat? What if winter lasts longer than expected? What if the harvest was smaller than usual? These aren't hypothetical questions. These are the mathematics of survival. Storerooms fill with the essentials of existence. Barley and wheat, the staple grains that will keep families alive. Peas and dried vegetables, carefully preserved to retain whatever nutrients they can offer. A simple food that has sustained Himalayan people for centuries. Butter and cheese, made from yak and cow milk, provide essential fats for bodies that will burn through calories just trying to stay warm. Dried meat, precious protein stored for the harshest months. Salt, tea leaves, and cooking oil, commodities that seem mundane elsewhere but become treasures here, knowing full well that if something serious happens. But survival isn't just about food. Livestock must be fed and sheltered. Animals are not just property in Komic, they're partners in survival. Families spend hours each day ensuring their animals survive, because if the animals die, the family's chances diminish drastically. Houses must be repaired before the brutal cold arrives, every crack sealed, every weakness reinforced. Clothes must be mended, layers prepared, because adequate clothing can mean the difference between life and frostbite. Then winter arrives, and time itself changes. The frantic pace of preparation gives way to a different rhythm, slower, quieter, more introspective. Families gather together in small rooms, huddled around fires fueled by dried dung. Religious rituals become central, offering spiritual warmth when physical warmth is scarce. Monks provide guidance, teaching the children who remain behind, while others have been sent to lower altitude hostels or relatives' homes before the roads close. Education doesn't stop entirely, it adapts. Local schools shut their doors during peak winter months, but learning continues in homes. Parents teach what they know. Children study by flickering lamplight. Some practice their religious education under the tutelage of monks. Others engage in self-study when possible, though resources are limited and conditions are harsh. This is education in its most essential form, knowledge passed directly from one generation to the next, survival skills intertwined with academics. Faith woven through everything. Rising from the barren mountainside like a sacred fortress, Tangyud Monastery has stood watch over Komic Valley for over 700 years. Founded in the 14th century, around the 1300s, this ancient structure isn't just a building. It's the spiritual heartbeat of the entire region. Belonging to the Sakya sect of Tibetan Buddhism, one of the major schools of Tibetan Buddhist thought, Tangyud represents centuries of unbroken devotion, a living link to a time when faith could move people to build monuments in the most impossible places. Within its weathered walls, approximately 10 to 20 monks maintain a way of life that has remained virtually unchanged for generations. Their numbers fluctuate with the seasons, the weather, and the demands of the religious calendar, but their purpose never wavers. These are men who have chosen the hardest path imaginable, dedicating their lives to spiritual pursuit in one of the harshest environments on earth. What drives them to stay? What do they seek in this frozen isolation that the rest of the world cannot provide? The monastic day begins before the sun touches the mountain peaks. In darkness and bitter cold, monks gather for early morning prayers, their voices rising in ancient chants that echo through stone corridors. The rhythmic chanting of mantras and sacred texts creates a soundscape that seems to transcend time itself. Connecting present practitioners to centuries of monks who spoke these same words in this same place. Meditation sessions follow. Hours of stillness where the only movement is the gentle rise and fall of breath. Where the mind seeks to penetrate the deepest mysteries of existence. Throughout the day, monks dedicate themselves to the study of Buddhist philosophy and scriptures, texts so old and precious that they're handled with reverence. This isn't casual reading. This is the preservation of knowledge that predates modern civilization, wisdom encoded in languages most of the world has forgotten. As daylight fades and the brutal cold intensifies, evening prayer rituals mark the day's close, bringing the cycle full circle. Silence, discipline, and repetition form the foundation of monastic existence. There's a profound power in this simplicity. A clarity that comes from stripping life down to its spiritual essentials. No distractions, no entertainment, no escape. Just the constant, unwavering practice of seeking enlightenment. But the monastery isn't always silent. Throughout the year, it explodes into vibrant celebration during key festivals. Losar, the Tibetan New Year, transforms Tangyud into a riot of color and sound. The most important festival of the year brings ritual dances, elaborate prayers, and offerings that symbolize renewal and hope. Saka Dawa celebrates the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and death. 3 pivotal moments compressed into one sacred observance. During the Gustor festival, monks don elaborate masks and perform sacred dances meant to drive out negative energies, their movements precise and powerful. A physical manifestation of spiritual warfare. For the villagers of Komic, The monastery is more than a religious institution. It's their anchor in a world of uncertainty. When winter isolates them, when sickness strikes, when despair threatens, the monastery stands as proof that something greater than suffering exists. The monk's presence reminds everyone that this harsh life has purpose, that enduring these conditions brings them closer to the divine. In a landscape where survival demands everything, faith provides the reason to keep surviving. So what does Komic Valley teach us? What can we, living in our temperature-controlled homes, our cities with hospitals on every corner, our lives of abundant food and instant communication, possibly learn from people who live at the edge of human endurance? Everything Komic teaches us that comfort is not the same as meaning, that convenience is not the same as purpose, that having everything doesn't necessarily mean being fulfilled. In a world where we complain when our Wi-Fi slows down, the people of Komic survive 6 months without any connection to the outside world. In a society where we panic if a delivery is delayed by a day, they plan their entire year's survival in a 3-month growing season. In an age where we seek happiness through accumulation, they find peace through simplicity and devotion. These aren't primitive people trapped in an outdated way of life. These are individuals who have made a conscious choice, generation after generation, to preserve something the modern world is rapidly losing. They've chosen community over individualism, faith over materialism, resilience over comfort. But Komic Valley is more than just a lesson. It's a warning. Climate change is already affecting the Himalayas. Glaciers are retreating. Weather patterns are becoming more unpredictable. The delicate balance that has allowed life in Komic for 7 centuries is under threat. Young people are leaving, drawn by the promise of easier lives at lower altitudes. The ancient knowledge, the survival techniques, the spiritual traditions, all of it could vanish within a generation. And when Komic disappears, if it disappears, we won't just lose a village. We'll lose proof that humans can thrive without destroying nature. We'll lose a living example of sustainable existence. We'll lose a community that has survived everything history could throw at it, only to be defeated by our collective failure to protect the planet. This is why Komic's story matters. This is why you're watching this documentary. Because places like this remind us what humans are capable of when pushed to our limits. They show us that the things we think we need for happiness, constant entertainment, endless choices, perpetual comfort, aren't actually necessary. That perhaps, in our quest for more, we've lost sight of what enough really means. The monks of Tangyud Monastery will wake tomorrow before dawn, just as they have for 700 years. The villagers will tend their animals, repair their homes, and prepare for whatever season comes next. Life in Komic will continue, as it always has, with or without the world's attention. But now you know. You've witnessed one of humanity's most extraordinary achievements, not a skyscraper or a technological marvel, but a community that refuses to surrender to impossible odds. So here's the question. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you let Komic's story fade from your memory as you return to your comfortable life? Or will you let it change how you see the world, how you measure success, how you define what it means to truly live? The people of Komic aren't asking for your pity. They're offering you wisdom. The question is, are you ready to receive it? If this story moved you, share it. Let others know that places like Komic exist. Support organizations working to preserve Himalayan communities and combat climate change. Visit responsibly if you can, bringing resources and respect, not just cameras and curiosity. Because every view, every share, every conversation keeps Komic's story alive. And as long as their story lives, so does the possibility that we might learn from it before it's too late.